Hello again. If you are like me and you have teens in the house, you likely have once in a while some holes to fix in your drywall. And if you go into any Home Depot or Lowe's or any of the home goods stores, you're going to find all kinds of patching kits to fix holes in walls in fancy ways. But honestly, you don't need that. With your standard piece of drywall and your spackle and a taping knife, you can make some repairs that look as good as the original wall. And I'm going to show you how. So in this particular example, the hole is much larger than you'd normally have with a ball or a fist through a wall, but in this case we have a bigger repair to do, so I'm going to show you how to do a bigger repair. I will add a picture of what it looked like before I cut out a clean edge to do the repair. Remember that if there's a break inward on the wall, chances are you're going to have some breakage on the back side, making the drywall wall really weak. So when you cut out your hole, you want to cut a nice square or rectangle and include any of the broken backing material behind the wall so that you have good firm wall to work with. In this case, the hole is so big that we're going to actually have to use a piece of bracing board behind it before we put our patch in. And I'll show you how that's done. So in my videos, I like to show examples of repair projects that you can do pretty much with the materials that you have around, so you don't have to spend extra money. In this case, I happen to have a piece of baseboard that's flat. The key part is that it's flat. And so with the baseboard, I'm going to install it in the hole and screw it into place so that I have a nice backing. Make sure to countersink your screw so that when you do your spackling job, you can cover everything and make it look nice and smooth. Okay, so now we have our brace in place. We have to cut our piece of drywall in a very special way to fit this space. But first, what we want to do is prepare the surface. If we mount a piece of drywall with tape, we're going to have a mound here that's going to be very difficult to hide. So what we're going to do is we're going to score the top layer of drywall and create a gap so that we can do a nice smooth finish. I'll show you what I mean with a knife. Okay, I have a normal box cutting knife with a good sharp blade. And depending on how old your drywall is and how many layers of paint there are, this may be easier and maybe a little bit harder. But what I do is I take a nice line about 1 inch around our existing hole, and then once that's complete, I'm going to use the blade to actually peel away the top surface. And again, it might come off cleanly, and again, you might have to hack at it. And I'll do that all the way around. Okay, so you can see that we've scored around the hole about 1 inch and that there's a nice little ridge there. And when we cut out our piece of drywall with the extra edging, you're going to see why that's important. So now we'll get our piece of drywall to cut it to size and fit our hole. Okay, so now comes the tricky part. I have a piece of drywall that just happens to be about the size that I need for our project. What we want to remember as we go through the next couple steps is that the outer layer, the clean layer of the drywall, is the one we want to protect and keep, because it's going to be our complete layer of cover here. This piece is even a little bit short, but it's okay, we can fix that with spackle. So the first thing we want to do is we want to flip it over, and we want to mark the drywall first for the hole that we've cut in the wall. First, we can do from top to bottom, and be liberal with your spacing here because we can fill gaps. We don't want to have to trim this later. And then we come up and we can do a piece about like this. I'm cheating in about a 1/4 inch on each side because again, it really doesn't matter. It's best to get close, but we don't want to have to trim later and keep breaking it away. That takes a lot of extra time. So now we basically have the lines we're going to use to cut the inside piece of our hole. And then we'll talk about how to do the outer section. Okay, so we've made our lines based on where we marked our hole. Keep in mind that this center section is the center section that we're going to use to fill the hole, but the outer perimeter is the paper that we want to use to fill that extra 1-inch gap that we created on the wall. And that'll enable us to blend it in really nicely. So the important part to remember is that we're trying to protect the paper side. So we don't want to cut all the way through when we do our cuts. And I'll show you the process. We're going to first score with a knife the paper on the backing, and then we're going to break it, and we're going to peel away carefully the bottom layer and the block so that we leave the paper intact on the front. And we'll go ahead and do that again on all edges. There we have it. We have our block and we have our outer perimeter paper that we're going to use. You'll note that I made a kind of messy edge over here. That's okay because that's the piece of drywall that I had around and I wanted to use, and we're going to make it work. Spackle is the magic. So now let's see how this goes into our hole. Okay, we're back at our hole. We have the piece we cut and we have our extended edges of paper. So what now we can do is fit this into the hole, assuming we cut it right. And what we have is a good snug fit. And then the paper will sit in the edge that we beveled out. The benefit of that is that we won't have any mounding from putting paper over the existing wall. And we're going to have to use a whole lot less spackle to get our job complete. In this case, because I put the board backing in, I could sink a drywall screw right in the middle here to hold it in place and get a solid fit. And I probably will do that before I start the spackling process. To get a good solid bond in the crack between our piece and the holes that we've created, we want to get some good amount of spackle in there and make it strong. So what I do is I get my knife and I just tape basically in the corners of the edges like this, just to gunk it up and get a good amount of material. We want to be absolutely sure, just like with any spackling tape, that we get it completely soaked. There's no dry patches, so that when it adheres to the wall, we don't have any bubbles to fix later. We have a piece that is filled with spackle. Now we will go ahead and mount that in the hole. What we do, we want to push in and really spread that spackle from the inside out to ensure that we have total coverage. You might, when you do this, end up pushing your piece of drywall a little too far in. You want to try to avoid doing that because the further in that it is, the more compound you're going to need later to fill your surface area. Now I want to use my knife to just smooth things out. This is our first layer. We don't want a lot of material. We just want enough to get a nice clean initial layer to get it to bond and be strong, and set up our layer for later for cleanup. on this side, which is what I wanted to avoid, because it's going to make me work extra hard at it. But we'll get it, because this patch is a little bit bigger than the normal ones we have to do this way. This patch is unfortunately behind a door, so it needs to be strong unless we put a stopper in a different place. It's not perfect, it's not meant to be, but we have a good layer, a strong layer in there. I'll sink a screw later, and we'll let that layer dry before we give it a quick sanding, and hopefully finish with layer number 2, probably 3 in this case. Well, here we have a different patch that was done in the house, similar to the other patch that we were doing earlier, but it's further along in its stages. You can see the perimeter of where the patch was placed, and that this is only 2 layers of spackle, and it's super smooth. So once this is finished sanding, we're going to put a layer of paint on it, and the job will be done. You'll never be able to know where the seam was. So if you have any questions about the process, feel free to leave me a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like what you see and it helped you out. We are just getting started with our channel, and our videos will continue to grow as we come across house projects that need to be done. Thanks for watching, and see you again.